have a safe drive back down the Sunshine Coast. First of all, I would just like to thank everybody for coming here to show your concern about the driver fitness testing. And we first thought there may be 40 or 50 people would show up, and now we had this avalanche. And I just think it's very important that this is an opportunity for you to express your concerns to government about policy that you think needs to be made more fair. And I'm sorry about the problem with the mic. There isn't some sort of electronic thing in my head that's making this happen. His worship just showed up. Welcome to Formosa. Colin Palmer from the regional district. And as things, I got him already. Maggie Bachman, of course, my assistant from the Powell River office, and Kim Chira is here as well, taking pictures from the Lower Sunshine Coast office. And we hope that today's information section will leave you with some knowledge of how you can make sure your work is done. Let's start.
Welcome everybody. I guess it's not working. I'd just like to welcome everybody, and we're just overwhelmed by the response. And we're going to open the meeting up to Roger Whitaker first, who has a little presentation to do, and then MLA Simons will take over doing the rest of the meeting.
Look, can we switch that around because Global's still here, so we'll do Roger after?
Okay.
So just, yeah, bring on the guy.
I must run. Thank you all.
Are you done?
Are you done?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
We're just going to do a little sound monitoring on the camera that's at the back there. And there's a ship lies waiting in the harbor. Where did his worship go? Could you please sing for us? Although my name's Roger Whitaker, I don't sing nearly as well as his worship, who's Mayor de Formosa, who's arrived here as well. Anyway, member Mr. Simons, your worship, and other dignitaries, I'm here representing the Powell River Seniors Heritage Project. And what we're doing is gathering the stories of seniors, whether you're from here, born here, or just moved here last week. We want your story. And then we're going to create a book, and that booklet is going to be for sale to the general public, but most importantly, we're going to gather your story. And you say, maybe, I don't have a story, what did I ever do? Well, you know what? Every single person in this room has done at least one thing in their life, whether it was raising a particular child or founding some kind of agency or organization, or maybe you just kept your yard clean and nice and never had a visit from Her Majesty's representatives over here, which makes you a really good citizen, which is also a story in itself, because that's an important element in a society, right? So we're trying to capture the society and as it's represented by your wisdom and knowledge. And to participate in this, the lady over there with the baby in the green shirt, that's Jenna Warbach. She is the director of this program. You just need to see her just to get your name and phone number. She'll contact you at another day. And also, there's a class running at Vancouver Island University, formerly Malaspina College, starting on the 17th. It's an hour and a half. And it's to help you learn how to interview people, because what we really hope to do is have seniors interview seniors so that you get, your story and capture it, then you'll write that story yourself. So you'll actually have an authorship in the book, and then in the end we hope you work at creating the book. So if you're interested in having your story captured, just interviewing somebody or having somebody come to interview you, please see Jenna over there with the baby, and that's Bonnie Grace, and you can sign up with her, and we'll get on with Nicholas's show and everybody's reason for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roger. And Anna, if you have any more words you want to word it on. You're having a sandwich.
Yes.
Okay, well, we won't interrupt there. This might be a good one. Well, let me just start by thanking all of the volunteers who have helped make today's meeting happen, and they're volunteers from the Cranberry Senior Center, volunteers from my office, and let me thank you again for being here, and thanks to the RCMP. Just to give you an idea of how this whole issue came to my attention, I began receiving letters from seniors who were being told that in order to assess their driver fitness, they had to go to Nanaimo in order to take a test. And that test was called the Drivable test and consisted of two parts, a computer test and an on-road test. And people who went for that test, if they failed the computer part, they didn't get an opportunity to do an on-road test. And those who failed the computer test could only take it again if they paid $350 to do so. And on the face of it, I thought that seemed rather unfair. I thought to myself, people in Powell River or people in Pender Harbor or in Seashelt or in Gibsons have to travel very long distance in order to determine whether or not they could keep their driver's license. But before I go into the details about that, I want to say what the Ministry of Solicitor General has said about this issue. They say that a very, very small minority of seniors will be referred to the Drivable part. That most seniors will be simply referred to ICBC to do an on-road test. And the difference between those who need to go to the on-road test here in Powell River with ICBC and those seniors who are being referred to go over to the island for the test has to do with what their doctor has sent to the Office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles. Now there are certain things you should remember. The Solicitor General, Shirley Bond, is responsible for the Office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles. And the Superintendent is the only authority that can give or take away a license. Even when the police do it, it's the Office of the Superintendent that actually revokes the permission to drive. So the government bodies that I'm going to be referring to on a few times is the Solicitor General in Public Safety, and that's Minister Shirley Bond, and the Office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles. The superintendent's name is Steve Martin, and I've met him. And their job is to make sure that our roads and streets are as safe as possible. Until in 1997, the British Columbia government had a policy called a Guide to Determine Fitness to Drive. And it was used from 1997 until 2010. In 2010, a very big document was produced which outlined the new rules and guidelines on how to figure out if someone has the ability to drive. And let's remember that it's not simply seniors we're talking about. We're talking about folks who may have had a stroke or folks who have some problems with their legs or what other parts of their body that may have an impact on their ability to drive. And they determined that there should be a way of figuring out who goes for the test at the Drivable Assessment Center and who simply goes to get tested at ICBC. Now, I have some problems with this. I have some problems with the fairness of the test. I have some problems with the access to the test, where it's located. And I also have some concerns about the fairness of the test itself. Now, not a lot of research and not a lot of scientific evidence has pointed to the accuracy of the Drivable test. Nobody has looked at it from an independent, peer-reviewed scientific level. And in this kind of area, we would all hope that any test that has an impact on our independence and on our lifestyle is one that they've thought out carefully, and that they've tested, and that they've reviewed, and that they've had other people review to make sure it's accurate. Well, I read an article in the Journal of Canadian Geriatrics, which says that the test, which results in sending people to the Drivable or to the ICBC, the screening test that doctors are being asked to use in their offices, tend to send people towards the Drivable program. So if your doctor is using something called the SIMARD MD test, it's a test that they use in their office. It's a 5-minute test with a pencil and paper. They'll send that to the superintendent, and the superintendent will decide, you go to Drivable, you go to ICBC. They say 90% of folks go to ICBC, and a small minority go to Drivable. But let me just say something about that particular test that the doctors are being asked to use to determine, ultimately, whether you go to test with the Drivable or you test online. The screening test used by the doctors was developed from the University of Alberta, and one of the people who developed it is Bonnie Dobbs, PhD. And she's an expert in driving assessments and driving fitness. She's also the spouse of the founder and the chief scientific officer of the Drivable assessment centers. So when I found that out, I thought, you know, when seniors come and complain to me about something, it's sometimes the specific issue itself. And sometimes it's because there's a feeling that there's something bigger going on, something a little bit more unfair that we don't quite recognize. When you combine that knowledge with the knowledge that it costs you $350 to be retested through Drivable, as opposed to nothing to be tested 3 times with ICBC, it raises some questions. The other issue is the 2010 Guide in Determining Fitness to Drive, the new one. The chief researcher on that project was the same Bonnie Dobbs who wrote the test for doctors to use to screen patients. I think there's a perception of a conflict right there on the surface of it. And I haven't even started talking about the touch screen computer testing and the on-road in an unfamiliar town, in an unfamiliar car road testing. So as you can see, we already have a few issues around fairness that I think are understood by most of you in this room. That there's something so important as maintaining independence when you're a senior needs to be thought through carefully, needs to be based on good scientific information, needs to be told to the community in a clear and unbiased way in order for it to be accepted. And I think the turnout in this room isn't saying we should stop testing seniors. It isn't saying we shouldn't worry about the safety of our streets. It's saying if we're doing that, do it in a forthright manner, in a way that's fair to every person, and one that we can rely on and trust. And I've heard stories, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't have to think far past my grandfather who drove his wife, who was ailing, to the doctor, in fact. He drove her to the post office and they went shopping together. It was more than just independence. It's quality of life and independence for those around them. I've heard from family members whose parents have had their licenses revoked in their life, looking after children and now having to look after the driving needs of their senior parents has also been impacted. And I'm going to be accused of fear-mongering and causing a problem where there isn't one. But I think we all recognize that if a test is fair, And if you can appeal it, and you know how to appeal it, then we can accept that. But let's not be tested on a questionable test. Let's not be passed or failed in a questionable decision based on questionable evidence when it has such an important impact on our daily life. And here we are. Here we are in Powell River, where senior drivers have come to me and said, I have no intention of ever driving in Courtenay. I have no intention of ever driving back down to Vancouver. I have no intention of driving anywhere other than Powell River. I have no intention of driving at night. I don't drive in the rain. And I go on the exact same route, to and from the mailbox, to and from the grocery store, to and from the Powell River Kings hockey games, and go Kings go. And I think that we need to have a test that meets the needs of people in rural communities, in isolation. So my biggest fear in coming here today was that you would tell me that I have to fix it. And I just want to tell you that I really would like to fix it. And I would like to tell you that my colleagues have raised this issue in the legislature. We have questions on the order paper. Show us the contract with Drivable. Show us what the science behind the Drivable. Show us answer some questions that will help us to understand. Bill Rowley, who's the MLA for Cowichan, he presented a petition of over 500 names in the legislature. This is not something that is new to government. When I questioned this policy, I was sent down to do a Drivable test myself. And I was worried. And I didn't have to think about it for days and days. I didn't have a letter in my mailbox saying you have 30 days to figure out whether you can maintain your independence or not. And I think that part of it's unfair as well. But I looked at that computer screen, which they said it was not a computer screen, and I used the little mouse, which they called a button instead of a mouse, and I thought, this is not easy at all. It's not just that it looks like a computer. They told me it wasn't a computer. You don't need to know anything about computers. But you need to understand the technology, and you touch the screen. And one tester, it took them 3 times to get the screen to register to touch. And I've had seniors telling me that their hands are not the way they used to be, and they're a little arthritic or sore, and when they touch the screen, they can't get the front of their finger to touch it because their nail will touch it. And of course that won't register a score. So we want to make sure that if you're using something like that to test seniors, it should be fair and it should be able to be used by anybody. And then there's the other issue. If you do happen to get into the category that sends you off to a road test, you're not allowed to use your own car. And that's different from the ICBC testing. So you're put into a car and you're not familiar with, everything from the seat and the location of the turning signals. I would have signaled to turn left using my windshield wipers. But we all understand the importance of being comfortable in a testing environment. I know that when I get tested for anything, if I'm nervous or if I'm worried, the impact of that will be recorded in the result. And when I bring these issues to the attention of Drivable and to the attention of the Minister of Solicitor General and Public Safety, they say that the examiners are trained to identify nervous drivers and that they will let them practice and that they will let them take their time and that they should be comfortable. And I've just heard way too many stories to contradict that claim. And I don't want to say that I think that everything about the testing system is completely wrong, but there's enough about it that is wrong that I think that your statements loudly and clearly to government will cause them to have another look. And that's what we want, another look at this whole system. So as you see, we've got a few handouts, and I'm not not used to doing this all the time, but the Motor Vehicle Act is what gives the authority to the Office of the Superintendent to review a person's driver's license. So Section 25, for a driver's license of any class of persons, the Lieutenant Governor and Council, in other words, Cabinet, government, by regulation with respect, may restrict the hours of the day, of the days of the week that a person can drive. That's Section 25. It's always been there. We have always had the ability, and we continue to have the ability to put restrictions on people's licenses. As we know, we do put restrictions on young drivers, on new drivers and learners, for a certain length of time, that they're not allowed to drive with kids in their car, and they need to have an adult supervision. And there are some jurisdictions in North America that have started to experiment with graduated delicensing. In other words, as people lose some of the perhaps sight or hearing or what have you, they may gradually be told you're only allowed to drive on highways of 80 kilometers an hour or less, or only within a certain distance from home, or only during certain hours of the day, and maybe not in snowy or rainy conditions. Not that we really have much choice sometimes. But that is one option. Studies indicate that that kind of de-license, or the restrictions on licenses, achieves the same outcome as current testing. But I also want to point out something that, I spent way too many years in university playing pool, and I in my research, you expect a certain standard of research, and in this particular case, I think we need to see peer-reviewed studies. Peer-reviewed studies could give us confidence that we're being treated fairly. It's the way all scientific matters are dealt with. But unfortunately, the science behind Drivable is protected because it's a private company, and we don't have access to that science. So we're saying that needs to be addressed. So there are other ways we can address this issue. We need to talk about when, in fact, people lose their ability to drive. How are we going to make sure we promote as much independence as possible? It's not like you can step out your front door and hop onto the nearest SkyTrain. So the issues facing us in our communities are different from the ones that are facing in the city. And I think that needs to be recognized. But I want it to be clear that I have no desire for people to be driving if they're not able to drive in the conditions. And I don't think there's anyone who disagrees with that here. So what we need to do, and I think we need to do this, not just by showing up, but that's a huge achievement in itself, that people who came here have already expressed their concerns by their presence, by their mere presence. The second thing you can do is turn to the yellow page and look at the back page, and there are a list of 5 places, 5 addresses. The first is the Honorable Shirley Bond, who is the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. The second is Mr. Steve Martin, who's the Superintendent. Mr. Tom Weber is the Manager of Road Safety at ICBC. My colleague, Kathy Corrigan, is the critic for the Solicitor General. I'm, of course, the local MLA. What I'm asking, if you have the inclination or the intention, and I don't want to make people do this if they don't want to, but I think it's helpful for the Minister to know that we're not satisfied with the current state of affairs, and that at the very least, could she please have a strong look at this, make sure that there isn't a conflict, that there is science behind the testing, and that in the meantime, I don't know, in the meantime, stop testing us? I guess that would be a lot to ask. But in the meantime, ensure that the government is taking the appropriate steps to address what I consider an injustice. Now, I don't need to do the talking up here. I was wondering if people in the audience who've had some experience to share could maybe just give us a brief description of what they experienced. And I think the mayor would like to have some words. I don't think he was sent there yet. Would you like to come up here, Dave?
Oh, I can talk from here.
Oh, he says he can do it without the microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll challenge. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, I'd like to thank the MLA for putting this on, and all our citizens for coming out today. You know, when I ran, I think I was in this hall and standing up at different podiums saying, I represent the citizens, the seniors, and that I believe you need representation. And so, you know, I don't, you know, like the MLA said, you know, I was afraid because you would maybe ask me to fix this, but I have some questions, Nicholas, that come to mind right away to me. And that is, what's our chances of asking, seeing if we can get a little bit of control over a system that we have zero control of? In other words, could we ask them to bring this whole system here to their ICBC center at Westview agencies, so that the people here, if they have to go for a computer test, they can actually bring their son or daughter or grandson or their neighbor or their friend to help them through the process of the touch screen that didn't work 3 times in a row for the person who, you know, developed it or whatever you talked about. So can we get that machine here? Can we also ask that if they do need to go further, they go further here with their own vehicle? In other words, for now, while you challenge all these other things, it'll take forever. But what can we do now? And so is there anybody that you, me, Colin, can go down there and say, we represent these people. And these people do not want to, you know, ICBC ain't broke. Right? Like, can we have this service brought home and then we don't have to travel? I mean, look at 7, we're going to be out of ferries for how long? You know, we're fogged in. Like, can we go appeal to somebody like we're doing in other files together, Nicholas? Can you and I, and if Colin wants to come for a drive, go down and see somebody and appeal to have those services brought here? This is BS having to go to Nanaimo. Absolute BS. So who can we talk to? So I'm prepared to do that with you and just go to somebody and scream and yell and jump on their desk.
Well, yeah, but Shirley Vaughn can be scary, you know. She takes her job very seriously. I did meet with her about this, and I did argue vehemently for local testing. That was at the time when I thought, well, this is the test that science has said is the best test. This is the test that I was told was going to be the best way to ensure our streets were safe. And now I'm not sure. I want a test that I don't quite trust to come closer to home. But I do recognize what you're asking for, and that's what I originally asked for. They moved an office to Courtney. They had only had one earlier in Nanaimo. So that was a bit of supposed to be considered a help. They also put a mobile unit in Seashell. Now that mobile unit is difficult to get an appointment for because it's not cost effective for them to send their testers to Seashell. So 2 issues. Yes, you and I and Colin and others, the more wind in our sails, the better luck we'll have. If we go with a strong request that they review the entire process, and when they get a better process, to let it be administered through the public system that we have in place in every community in this province, instead of forcing people over high mountain passes and cross ferries. And you know, I agree with you, Dave, and we will continue this. This isn't the end of it. So, good question. Yes, we will. I'm not sure about jumping on the desk.
I'll leave that to me.
Okay, I'll leave it to you. Would you like to come up here?
I can speak from here.
Oh, yeah, you
I'd
can.
like to add one thing. When individual letters begin turning up on the desks of where they need to go, they have to start paying attention. It's that individual letters. This was told me many, many years ago by a very wise man in Prince Rupert. So please think about that. Individual letters should be piling up on the desks.
She was told by a wise man.
So, okay, that's the recommendation, which has applause from here, so we heard it, is that everybody write a letter. And it just doesn't have to be a fancy letter, it doesn't have to have lots of paragraphs, and it can have as many spelling mistakes as you will allow it. And it still registers a concern. I think that is important. No, I got a lot of mail on this subject. More than, oh, I wasn't going to say more than the HST because that's impossible. But I did get a lot of mail on this subject, and I think that if you want to email me or if you want to write a letter, I think the best thing is to write to the list of people in the back and express your concern. The most important one is to write to the minister, and then the copies should go to those 4 down below. If you have any issues with writing letters or you want help with them, let me know and we can figure something out. We have a question there, there, and there. Yes, sir.
Is an email as effective as a letter?
Oh, I get that question quite a bit. I think they respond to all correspondence, but a physical letter is sometimes good.
But they got to do something.
They got to do something with it. They have to put it somewhere. They can't press a button. Yes, sir.
You have a list here of all the attendants who are here, all the people who attend here today.
We
You
keep
have
lists.
names, right?
I think we have a list of everyone who's...
Why don't we use that? We all agree. Why don't we use that list and send it collectively? Pass the-
I listed it? Okay, well, it might be complicated. We'll ask Maggie.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
We know the numbers of people that are here, and I think that would be sufficient, and with Global being here and panning the room, that they're gonna see that there was a lot of people concerned.
Yeah, and I'm just, because some people may not want their name going to the government. I don't know if there's anything wrong with that. Okay, we had a question over here, yes? A registered letter, that costs a little more. I'm not sure it will be much more impactful. I think when they get even a few dozen letters from folks, they're going to have to pay attention. And my hope is that the minister will make a specific statement to people who've attended here. I hope to say that they'll take action on this file and they'll look further into it. But a registered letter a letter is good enough, I think. Yeah. Yes.
I'm just one of the doctors in town, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. One is that SIMARD ND test. Dr. Dome and I have actually never heard of it, and we don't use it. We use ones that are scientifically validated. However, sometimes people get a perfect score on the ones we use, and they still come back having failed to drive able. So that's one thing. The other thing is we don't get much communication from the OMSV or from the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles. There's an online thing that we use, but we don't get much communication, but we have the legal responsibility to report if we think we want to say it. So,
I thank you for those 3 comments. First of all, yes, doctors are, because of a recent Supreme Court decision, doctors are held liable if they have not notified the office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles if they are concerned about a driver. The second part about the SIMARD ND, it's clearly within government policy that they're piloting the SIMARD ND right now, and they are hoping to have it, it's on their website, they're hoping to have that in every doctor's office to use as the pre-screening tool. Unfortunately, that pre-screening tool, as I mentioned, was developed by the spouse of the founder of Drivable. And the only independent review of that screening tool that the doctor mentioned suggests that it may funnel too many people to the Drivable program. So in my mind, that there is a conflict because of financial gain potential.
I'm a conference owner, and I wanted to say what happened to me several times is that when I write on my driving test, the patient should do a driving test only, a road test only, and the patient agreed with this, and then they are called into the driving, and I don't think this is fair at all, because I never said driving, but I wrote road test only. And I so far didn't know that there's a chance to write ICP. Nobody told us, at least I didn't know this. So when I write driving road test only, I was always assuming road test only in agreement with my patient. And then they are called to driver, but there's nothing to change afterwards. I tried for years, and for certain people in town, to get a driving test afterwards, and there's no way to do this. There's no way to get them to drive in town.
You're absolutely right. And I'm going to say something I haven't said yet. In 2008, the Office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles eliminated the medical director position. There is no longer a doctor working for the Office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles. So they're receiving doctors' reports, and and I'm not going to disparage the people who are making these decisions. They're nurses, and they're apparently qualified to do this. They receive your report, and they decide. They'll decide based on factors unknown to us and impossible to determine from us. I've had doctors on the lower Sunshine Coast tell me in tears about the impact of what they thought was a simple request for a driving test. You know, and the studies that I've read indicate that the on-road test is the best predictor of a person's ability to drive, not that whether their finger touches the screen. But I'd like to just thank you for being here and recognizing that this is something that we all have to deal with, doctors and family and individuals who drive. So there's a question in this row here. Yes.
My name is Patty Gibson. My mom took the drivable test and she failed, and I'm fully in support of her retaking the driving or taking the driver's test. I think there are a couple of concerns that we should have her. Why did they not take into account your driving record? My mom never had an accident in her life. Yeah, she went over to a touchscreen. I work at the post office and I use a touchscreen every day at work. And I tell you, if you don't tap it right on the right spot, it's not going to react the way you want it to react. And what's wrong with the old cognitive tests where you put the block in the square, you put the circle in it? Is that not hand-eye coordination tests? And what's wrong with something like that? And are we the only province that this is happening to?
We, so far, British Columbia. So far, we're the only province that has implemented this as the way they're going to go forward. This is the new 2010 BC Guide to Assessment of Driver Fitness. And the trend is towards using the SIMARD MD and to using a growing number of drive-able centers that they're going to set up across the province. This is a new business that didn't exist 5 years ago. We have people working in our ICBC offices who would be able to be trained in administering them. Although they say that the drive-able folks are all occupational or physical therapists with specialized training. We don't know the details. Yes, doctor.
And what I don't understand is that I know my patients since many years. I decide driving test, road test only, and somebody who doesn't know the patient in a different city, somewhere else, who's never seen this patient, decides to run over me and say they have to do this with you. That means it's totally unfair. I don't think my colleagues even know this.
And I'm afraid you're right. Your colleagues don't know this, and I don't claim to know everything, but I know that the 2010 guide was co-signed by the Office of the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles and the BC Medical Association. Now, unfortunately, the way these policies get drawn up, written and drawn up, don't always involve the largest population of people with input. It's a few people doing these kind of studies. And I hope that you will be getting, unless this is reversed, you will be getting information on the SIMARD. It is the goal of government to have doctors using the SIMARD test. I think that that's a conflict. I think that what you said specifically about knowing your patients, no, in a way government has said this takes the pressure off the doctors because it's very deterministic. They do this, fill out this form, send it away. And so when your patients come to you and say, you took my driver's license away, you don't have to say, I'm concerned or whatever. You say, I just filled in the test they told me to fill in. Because that's what happens. Some of you may have gotten a letter saying you need to go and get a medical report from your doctor within 30 days. And if you don't do that, your driver's license will be removed. So you go to the doctor and they do a little test and send it off to the Office of the Motor Vehicle branch, and then suddenly you get another letter saying, you must do this test within 30 days or you'll lose your license. And altogether, I just think that the process seems disrespectful. Yes, a question over here.
Yes, is there any mechanism in place for refunding people from remote communities who are forced to go to a central area?
Thank you for that question. So far there isn't. And I talked to my friend Gary Coons, who you may know as the critic for BC Ferries. His constituents from Haida Gwaii, from the Queen Charlotte Islands, he estimated that they'd have to spend 5 days and about $600 just to get to the testing facility and back. So there are provisions that are supposed to allow for exceptions, but you know, we need to have a system that makes sense. It doesn't add additional cost to us as drivers. We have systems in place, and I think, you know, we recognize that this isn't about making money off seniors. This should just be about making our roads safe. Follow-up question, Mr. Speaker.
Would this not be considered a discrimination under the Canadian Human Rights Act to make one British Columbia pay?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. In fact, there are people who are pursuing this from the legal perspective as a possible age discrimination, because it's age 80 where this becomes an automatic test. Everyone who turns 80 and subsequent every 2 years, they'll be asked to submit a medical report through their doctor to the superintendent, and just simply based on age, I think that there may be some grounds there. However, the courts have ruled that driving is not a right, it's a privilege, and that certain standards have to be met. We just want to make sure those standards are ones that we agree with. We got lots of questions now. We'll go there, and then Roger, and then in the back, and then over here. How's that? You're third on the list, sir, at the back? Okay. Yes, where were we? Oh, yeah?
Bob.
Bob.
I wonder if anybody realizes we live out of town, and if our driver's license get taken away, we have to get forced to sell our house because we can't walk to town. It's too far.
Yes, ma'am, you're absolutely right. The impact on every senior will be different. And I've heard of some folks who've said to themselves, if I can't have a car, I can no longer live in the house I've lived in for how many decades. And, you know, I just say, there may be a time when people lose their ability to drive. And that will be very difficult. But if it has to make a decision of such great importance, let's make sure the tests are fair. Yes, sir.
Isn't it a fact that the mini mental test, the 30 points, 25 points passage? Did you know that?
I know that's the other test that some doctors still use, is that right?
That's the one the doctor gave me. So I says to him, and the last one, she says, spell the word willed. I spelled it. She says to me, no, spell it backwards. It was a big laugh, but it cost me my license. So I made a mistake selling it backwards. She says, don't worry, Bob, you passed. That's what I thought, but she made another mistake. She was supposed to evaluate me personally. She sent a test to Victoria, and they took me to Drivable. So we challenged it, the doctor challenged it for me. She says, don't worry, Bob, I'll give you some more psychiatric tests, harder ones. They can't turn this down. So I passed them all with flying colours. She sent them off. They wouldn't listen to it. They took me to Drivable in Nanaimo. I failed the test on the computer. I lost my license. And another thing with the Drivable there, she says to me, the sheriff says to me, you wear glasses to drive. I said, I do. She says, where are they? I had my glasses in my pockets because I knew it was a computer test, but I had reading glasses. She says, is that the ones you drive with? I says, no. Be honest. She says, get the ones that you drive with. So they were in my daughter's car outside, so I went out and brought them in, which I couldn't really see the screen properly. They wouldn't listen. No way. I failed that test, and I got the results back. My doctor got it back. I was a stone idiot. Never passed. Nothing was right. So anybody who thinks you can pass that computer test, I'll give them a bit of advice. Start playing games when you're computer. I get an 80-year-old to help you, like my granddaughter.
You know, once again, the theme through what you said is about fairness, and I think that that is ultimately what this meeting is about. So thank you for sharing that story. And you know, they're using some tests to send, it's not up to the doctor whether to send it, just so you know. If Victoria is demanding a medical report, Victoria gets a medical report, and they will do what interpretation they need. And you know, I hope that somehow that can be resolved. We've had a situation here in Powell River where one woman went to the Drivable test in Courtney and didn't pass, and subsequently paid the money to go and do the same test in Vancouver, and subsequently passed.
Yeah.
So I know that we are aware of situations where the unfairness is clear. The stories about the impact, I think, are just fueling the need to have a resolution to this issue. Those kind of stories with people concerned about losing their homes, people concerned about losing their mobility, I think that calls out on the government to take some action and to rectify the mess that they've caused and the concern that they've caused in seniors throughout the province. Any further stories about, oh, Roger, you wanted to make a comment?
I just wanted to ask you a question. Are there any other MLAs on your side of the House or the other side of the House that support your stand on this? And second part to that is, if they're not evaluating on the other side of the House, they soon should, because my math says that the first part of the baby boomers is turning 65 right now, which puts them into the senior demographic, which means this group is going to get larger than the 200 that are here today, and every one of them votes. And I'm just suggesting that that might have a lot of impact on whatever the steps they take in the future, either as government or opposition. So can you sort that out to answer?
Yeah, I agree that this is just going to become a bigger issue. And I have had colleagues, Katrina Conroy from the Interior, and Michelle Mungal, and Gary Coons, and Bill Routley. They've all been raising this issue in the legislature. I haven't heard anyone from the government side yet, but with the information that they're being told, and the information that I was being told, made it difficult to sort of stand up and say this is just wrong anyway. They convinced me that this was the most forward advanced technology used in driver testing. And when I did research, I realized that it was being sold to us as that, but in fact there are techniques and there are measures used currently, or that have until 2010, that served our purpose well. I wanted to mention one thing about statistics, and driving statistics and accident statistics as they relate to seniors. The Public Safety and Solicitor General publishes accident statistics every year. The overwhelming common view is that seniors have a higher proportion of accidents than younger people, or that they compare with the age group 16 to 24. Now, I've looked at those statistics, and I realized that in many cases, the statistics being quoted are the injury and fatality rates. Now, we don't like talking about injury and fatality rates for seniors, but in terms of the statistics, injuries and fatalities may be higher in senior citizens, but we have to remember, take into account the physical health or the frailty of those seniors, and the chances of being injured may be greater. When you look at actual number of collisions per licensed driver, in other words, how many seniors have a license to drive, how many get into accidents, it's actually lower than most of the other groups, age groups. And I think we need to go right back to the basics to figure out what statistics are driving this whole issue towards getting seniors off the road. And we all know that it's our responsibility to make it known when we think someone shouldn't be driving on the road, when we see them doing things that are clearly dangerous, and we don't want any of our families and kids or relatives to be endangered by people who don't drive well. That's one very important issue, but because it's such an important issue doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about the fairness in assessing that. And I think that some people may be afraid to talk about it because it's a difficult issue. But it's a difficult issue. It's not something that we can't handle. As a public policy issue, we should deal with things in a forthright and straightforward manner, even if some of us will be negatively impacted by that. We still need fair testing. Do you have a question?
What do the other provinces do to evaluate their seniors? What tests do they use?
They have different tests, and doctors across the country have different pre-screening tests. Often drivers will be referred by police officers, by family members to the Office of Superintendent of Motor Vehicles. Every province has their own superintendent with their own guidelines on determining fitness to drive. So the policies are different across the country, but more and more we see provinces copying other provinces. And I just hope that if any province wants to copy British Columbia, wait till British Columbia is better before copying it.
My husband is 80 years old, and he's driven without an accident all those years. And since last year, he's been very concerned about having to get extra testing. He has a Class 1 license. He's driven a bus for the handicapped for extended care for many years and drives every week. He has medical tests and forms filled in every year. Is he likely to be asked to have any other testing unless there is a specific report that he claims?
Well, just by virtue of the fact that he turned 80, he will be asked for a test from the doctor.
More than once a year?
And it shouldn't be more than once a year. And it shouldn't necessarily mean that there will be a Drivable test out of it. It may simply mean that the Office of the Superintendent will refer him to ICBC for a renewal.
But will that be on top of the medical he has once a year for renewal of his Class 1 license?
I don't believe so. I think that's covered in the same thing, but we have to figure it out looking at the deep, small print.
He drives a dirt bike too.
Oh, let's not even start with the dirt bikes. Seniors and dirt bikes, new policy next week. It's the ATVs that are guys. Yes, sir.
Are you here as our MLA representing just Powell River, or is there an organization within the NDP provincial party who is going to do the same for every community in British Columbia?
A very good question. This is the first meeting that's being held, as far as I know, from any of my colleagues. I sit in the caucus with rural caucus members, so MLAs who represent rural areas where they've heard more about this than the city folks. Because, you know, in the cities there are a few people who drive, people who use public transit. This, I think, I hope this just to be the beginning of expressing concern to government until they decide that this policy deserves further review. You know, I can say I demand that they end this practice immediately and all that, and, you know, get all excited. Or I can say, you know, this is about good publicity, and good public policy needs to be solidly based. And I'm going to hope my colleagues continue with this kind of a meeting. I'll have one on the lower Sunshine Coast as well, because there are a number of concerns raised there, which are very, very similar, if not going to be identical to the concerns of the upper Sunshine Coast.
I guess what I was asking you, should this not be an overall provincial NDP concern and organized and made powerful?
I think that because of some of the recent sort of understandings of how this policy came about, that it may morph into that kind of an approach. But right now, it's kind of like, there goes Nick again. You know. But I hope that I can convince all my colleagues to say, let's make this a #1 issue. It's a huge issue. To me, it's important. So I hope that catches on. Oh yes, question. We'll go to the back again. Yes.
I'd just like to point out that this really affects more than just the 80-year-olds, because I personally, I'm not 80 yet, but I know people who are my age who are actually babysitting and picking up great-grandchildren. And I think there is a surprising number of grandparents and great-grandparents who are responsible for children. And so if like a doctor's order is ignored, that's going to affect more than just the older person. It's going to affect a lot of younger people too. So I think it should be an overall concern rather than just for us.
I agree with you. I agree. We do know that the impact of driving, seniors driving, is the family, is the community. We have people who play music at the Olive de Vaux, and we have people pick up others to go to church, and there's a whole community that relies on the drivers around. And I think that we understand in a community this size how there's a bit of a domino effect when something happens. When the ferry's out and there's not enough, people aren't visiting and the food doesn't come in, our stores get empty. Anyway, don't get me started. Well, you know what? The BCTV was going to be here today, but they were coming over on the North Island Princess. I said to Maggie, email them and they can just do a story on the North Island Princess. And the poor little boat serving the Texada now, it ran into the dock too hard yesterday and coffee pot fell over. Yeah, I know. There was actually, I'm worried about it, because there was an injury. And, we're very, that's a meeting next door. Yes.
Younger people have had strokes, but I know one particular case who we had a stroke test here last February, subsequent to a stroke, after fine colors. Now that she is strong again in the summer, as cognitive ability has improved, then he actually got called to the drive-in. Why? I'm not good at health insurance. And the result of that was inconclusive. Now that makes me query. I mean, if this is, the information is computerized, whatever, how could it be inconclusive? So then he called back for his actual driving test in the company's car, and he passed. But the agony lecture, what he lectured, this whole, sort of, right? Oh, yeah. But there's more people involved in it than just the seniors.
You're absolutely right. There are more people involved with this program than just the seniors. And I have folks come to me who've, maybe had a medical issue that they're healing from, and their health gets better, and they resume the same capabilities as previously. But when you brought up the issue that their computer test was inconclusive, that's the part that is a major concern. There's a small minority that fail outright, and there's a small minority that pass completely. Most people are found that their test results in an inconclusive result, which requires the Drivable driving program test, which is half the cost of the $350. So it is an issue for more than just seniors, and I think that this is going to have a greater impact unless we address it soon. All right. Okay.
I just wanted to let the group know that we have been in contact with 3 members from the seniors, Save Our Seniors in Courtney. And they were to come over today. And they had some information, but they went to their MLA and he wouldn't help them at all. So we have a big thank you for
What's his name?
And I didn't even plan to put the microphone there. Would you like to repeat it? Thank you. No,
Another concern that I have, and I don't want this to, you have to go to Drivable to obtain your driver's license. And we've got an RCMP officer over here because I'm unsure of this. To drive a scooter, do you need a license? And if you don't need a license, then why are you allowed to drive a scooter? Is it because the only person who probably will be killed is you? The person else? I mean, isn't it?
It really depends what kind of scooter it is. We have all sorts of different kinds of scooters on the road. We're seeing stuff from those 2-wheel trikes to scooters that the seniors are driving in as well. Those kind of scooters, you're in those, you're a pedestrian. I don't know what you call those things, but just the ones that seniors have actually get. Yeah, well, we're talking the battery-powered ones that you see people driving around with the lights.
Mobility scooter.
Pardon me?
Mobility scooter.
Right, okay, thank you. When we get into scooters as a means of transportation, anything under 50 cc, you have to have a class 5 license for. Anything above that, you have to have a motorcycle license for. If you have pedals on it, it's one of those electric bikes. You don't have to have a motorcycle license or a car license, but they do have restrictions. I think it's 37 kilometers an hour. They're not able to go over that. And they do have to have pedals and have the ability to be pedaled. I hope that answers your question.
Wear a helmet. Wear a helmet, put a flag on it, reflector tape. We even have, I think the RCMP operates scooter safety sessions once in a while. Yes?
So then why is it that a person who loses their driver's license because their eyesight is too bad to drive, they get onto a scooter and drive it?
Because I think it's because it doesn't hurt as much when the scooter runs into you. But I don't know if that's the official response. Depends if you have a bumper on the front.
A motorized scooter, you're not able to drive on the road. You're still able to drive an electric bike on the road because it's not considered a motor vehicle. It's a bike still. So that's why there's that.
Oh yeah. The scooters aren't really allowed on the road. They're not allowed even if they have a flag on them. They're supposed to be on the sidewalk. Well, that's another meeting. We have someone who wants to challenge the RCMP. Verbally.
Scooter is required to drive on the sidewalk. Where there is no sidewalk, it's required to drive on the side of the road to oncoming traffic. So they are required to drive on the road where there is no sidewalk.
Absolutely.
Okay, where there's no sidewalk, drive on the road. Stay out of the way. Be careful, go ahead. Yes, sir.
First of all, I'll say that you can be injured by somebody on a scooter.
Yes, I should think like that.
I had knee surgery, I was doing very well, and then I got hit by somebody I know on a scooter when I got pushed in front of him. It's not his fault, and I know. But I have a question on this, fifth paragraph down. The yellow page, the OMSV does not accept anonymous complaints, but may not give the identity of the complainant to the senior. Now, this could lead to somebody picking somebody else they don't like and sending in a complaint.
Yes, I understand that concern. In their more detailed policy review, they're quite careful to point out that they won't accept something without basis. It has to have some basis in fact, and they will check. As the same way that in child welfare you can report a concern about a child without leaving your name, but they won't automatically assume that to be correct without doing their due diligence. But that's a good point you raised, and it's something that we have to remember, that if we're concerned about it, it's about making sure that our community is safe.
Well, it just says here that they will not accept anonymous complaints from motor.
No, the motor vehicle branch will write down the name of the complainant. They won't give it out to anybody. They won't release the name. They'll accept it. If I phone, I have to say who I am, so they can follow up. Yeah, they have to know. They won't just. Yeah, you can complain, but they'll want to know what your name is. And if you're afraid of leaving your name, you can say, "Don't release my name." Yes, sir.
In regards to having scooters on the sidewalk, how about the pedal bike, the kids that come running up to that, give her the trigger, knock them over? There's no rule against that. I don't think there's no rule on the sidewalk.
Well, I'm not sure. That's about bicycles with kids on them. Well, that's not good. Yeah, no, there are rules around where you can bicycle safely, and you should be safe. But I don't know if you heard the question. I think the question was about people kids driving on their pedal bicycles on their sidewalk. On the sidewalk. I know, come fast too.
Bicycles, they're not supposed to be on the sidewalk.
Why is scooters allowed on the sidewalk?
I think what we're having, the problem is the different kinds of scooters, and the Motor Vehicle Act is, as we get new different kinds of technology, and we get the e-bikes now, and we're getting the things, we're categorizing them into different things. So when I say a scooter is supposed to be on the sidewalk or going the opposite direction, I mean a mobility scooter. When we start getting into those electric bikes, they're treated just like bicycles. They have to go with traffic.
Yep.
And when we have actual like 50cc or 49cc scooters, they're actually considered vehicles, and all the rules of the road apply to them.
Right.
So I think we're just getting a little bit mixed up here in what a scooter is and what kinds of scooters, because there's different rules for different classes.
Yeah.
So I hope I cleared that up a little bit.
Well, again, the motor, regular bicycles are not supposed to be on the sidewalk.
They're not.
That's correct, sir. Now, I just know that we've had a nice long meeting here. Do you think we've covered the topic adequately? And do you think, okay, thank you for coming. We have one more speaker, an encore.
To go back to a previous thing, concerning numbers, you know how many people are here. There are a lot of people, as I understand it, who couldn't get to this meeting because it was full. Are those numbers going to be taken into consideration? Are you going to offer this again in this area?
Oh, good question. We absolutely know that there were more than 190 people who wanted to come here, and I think we're about 160 in the room. So we know that there's concern and increased concern. We will, it's possible that we'll have another meeting, but this will be on Shaw Cable and it will be on television for people who want to see it. I will do another meeting on the Lower Coast. If the government doesn't pay enough attention, then we'll just have to organize another one. All right. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Senior Center. Thank you, Anna. Most appreciated. And thank you for the food, too. So.
My daughter phoned me from Courtney saying that there was an article in the newspaper that Save Our Seniors were fighting this Drivable. And so I phoned, she gave me the phone numbers of the 3 that were in the paper, and I phoned and I talked to Winnie Fran from Courtney, and she said that they had been in touch with their MLA, because I told her I had gone to MLA Simons, and he was very cooperative. And she said, well, we went to our